We're back with another episode of the One Pour Problems podcast. I am super excited to be joined by Jenny and Ellen, founding partners of the Boulder Company, and also co-hosts of the Manufacturer Shakeup podcast. It's something that I have definitely been a fan of for a while. So excited to have you guys here and be able to learn a little bit about what you guys do, and also dive into a little bit about the podcast and how it came about and why exactly you guys were doing it. So excited to have you here.
Happy to be here, Sal.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we start off every episode to kind of talk a little bit about the drinks that we have. I know we did our other video before, but more curious to hear again why we're drinking bourbon right now, and talking about leadership and emotional intelligence and a lot of the coaching and training and development that you guys.
You mean aside from the fact that a lot of people call alcohol liquid courage?
Ooh, that's good.
Just saying.
Yeah. That's it. So all of your training is just based off of the premise of liquid courage, is what I'm hearing.
That would be what we should rename the company if we ever decided to rebrand.
That's right.
Liquid courage. People would, because let's face it, leadership is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It is an emotional contact sport. Mm-hmm. So maybe liquid courage would be something if we ever decided to rebrand.
Yeah.
Because what happens to us is people will often drop a U into our company name, but we're not from Boulder. We're from Connecticut. So it's Boulder, be a bolder version of yourself. Mm. So we could solve that problem if we just rebranded Liquid Courage.
Change the company name.
That's it. That would be
go.
a whole different approach.
We'll give you credit for it.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then I shout, it's all I need,
Yeah.
but
there you go.
That's good. So speaking specifically about the Boulder Company, and both of your backgrounds, I'd love to hear a little bit from both of you of kind of what led you to here.
I can start.
Go start.
All right. So I have what I call a career portfolio, because I've done a lot of different things, right? So I started with urban planning and economic development was my early career. I spent 3 years in 2 different municipalities and then went into economic development and then jumped the fence into retail and worked for Bob's Stores that was founded here in Middletown and did all of their marketing and PR and sports sponsorships and special events. And in 97, I hung out my own shingle and started doing marketing and PR kinds of things. And along the way, I had started to develop a real passion for training and development. Wow. So I was sort of the lazy Susan of different careers. I was doing some marketing, some PR, and some training and just growing my tool belt of training and development skills. And then in 2003, we met through another business venture. I'll just say that. I've tried every multi-level marketing business that's out there. I got to be honest with you. I'm a shiny objects kind of girl. I love an entrepreneurial opportunity. They've been a bit of a distraction, but that's how we met, was, in looking for ways to generate some extra income. And so that's the starting point for us. So you want to do your background and then we can talk about.
Sure. I'm not nearly as fancy as she is. I started my career driving a forklift. So good. I come from a much more hands-on background, didn't go to college, but I think not everybody's meant for college. So although that is something that probably is becoming common knowledge now, during the days that I was coming up in business, that was a lot less of a normal thing. It was, you didn't go to college. But the great news about that path was that it led me to work, also a lazy Susan of a lot of different careers, but it also gave me the perspective of all these different roles in terms of status and leadership and management. So and I had different roles. So I had sales. I worked in leadership and management. I drove equipment. And when I got into manufacturing was when I got to really understand the importance of understanding all these different positions. And I just fell in love with the opportunity to help people feel better about who they were at work. And so when that started to happen for me, which was around the time we met, I think within a couple of years, early 2000s, that was when I started to build my chops and learn about facilitation and coaching and learning and development. So I got to blend a lot of my real world experience that I was getting on the ground with learning how to be a good developer of people. And that was I consider that to be an incredible blessing in the way that my fortunes unfolded.
Yeah, I love that because my background, I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. I have an MBA in forensic accounting, and I came to Charles IT, and I was like, I was the big dog, had my MBA. I was like, I'm somebody. And then I like take a look in the mirror and I'm like, I work for Foster. Foster made it through not even a semester of college.
Yep.
And he is the CEO of this company.
Yeah.
And I got into the hiring side of the business as like one of the many hats I had when I first joined. And I'm going out and I'm finding all of these technicians and they're like, we don't care if they have a college degree. And I was like, what? I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then the more time that went on, I was like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
And that is like, 2017 to now.
Yeah.
Going from your perspective at a very different time, like it's a bold move.
It's a very big paradigm shift. Right? It's a very big paradigm shift. And it also came to an apex when college started costing $60,000 a year for a degree that people were like, well, if I'm going to come out with $250,000 of debt, what job can I possibly make that's going to get me out of my parents' basement?
Yeah, seriously.
Right? So, I think people started to just question, how am I spending my money? What am I actually getting trained in? And maybe it makes more sense to go into the workforce and work a few years and figure out what I'm interested in and then pursue a degree. Yeah. So, I don't think the career path that I took was right or wrong. I don't think yours was right or wrong. It's just they're different. And I think it gives us an opportunity to have a very broad perspective when we go into a workplace to be able to relate to anybody who's there.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have humble beginnings. My dad owned a retail store, an Army Navy store. So, we grew up selling, essentially.
So, talked a little bit about the Boulder Company, but curious to hear a little bit about the manufacturing shakeup, because for a while that was like kind of sweeping over the entire manufacturing space where, we had Ari's podcast, that was like kind of the first one in space. Yep. Then there was a lull. Then you guys came in with manufacturing shakeup and I started to see it everywhere. So curious to hear about what led you to start that and, just some of the experience that you took from that.
Well, yay that Gail Tannenbaum, our producer, you saw it everywhere. That means Gail was doing a great job with marketing.
And she did both podcasts.
She
right?
did,
So Gail Tannenbaum is actually the common thread between the two. She worked with Ari for years and then had the opportunity. She got involved with the Elevate Her initiative, which was out of the Office of Manufacturing in Paul Lavoie at the beginning of his term as the commissioner. And she got involved in Elevate Her because she had a passion for manufacturing. And then they started talking about how do we get the stories out about the women who are in manufacturing on a broader level than this group of women who are coming together to talk about what it's like to be a woman in manufacturing. And so they worked with, I think Cronin was the ad agency at the time, and they made it part of that. And so we started. We got funds and off we went into the world of podcasting. We'd been guests before, but we'd never been hosts.
Yep.
So it was a lot of fun. One of the things I really appreciated about it was sort of what we were just talking about with the broad array of people and experiences. We had everybody from Cindy Bigelow, who is third generation owner of Bigelow Tea, one of the biggest tea brands in the country right here in Connecticut, all the way down to somebody who was green as green can be in their career, right? It was their first job out of technical school, and they were just digging in and getting messy with the equipment and having all the fun with it. So being able to talk to that range of people and being able to see the common threads across all these different parts of manufacturing that people were looking at, the different roles that they were in. But I think the common threads that really jumped out at me, I don't know if this is true for Ellen, but the whole, it's great to make stuff and make a difference with the stuff that we make. That was something I saw over and over and over again with our guests, was how empowering manufacturing actually is, which is not something anybody ever talks about. Yeah. We talk about how it's dirty. We talk how it's, technical, high tech. We talk about, the boys club, which is, that's an out of date conversation that's rapidly going away, fortunately, just because times are changing. We may talk about a lot of things, but that's not a word you hear every day when you hear people talk about manufacturing. I feel empowered because I make stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? How many people get to say that about their work?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think it's really cool that that's like the messaging that you're getting out there, but it's maybe cooler because it's the messaging specifically from like women in manufacturing.
Yep.
And I think that's a good transition to talk about like one of the topics we had today, which was like women in manufacturing and some of the challenges there. And so from like your experience, what are some of those challenges that, women that are either entering into the manufacturing world, whether it's as a like machine operator or welder or someone that's in the trenches every day, to even someone that might be going into a manufacturing role as an executive.
Sure.
What are some of those challenges?
So, it's got the industrial history of manufacturing is that it's very male-centered, right? The length of the day, the intensity of the job, it's very production-driven. It's not very flexible in terms of schedules. That's the perception. But that has slowly shifted over time. There's such a demand for labor inside of manufacturing that they had to bend towards the people that they wanted to attract. And so that's been happening gradually. We've been very involved with manufacturing and conversations about women in manufacturing since about 2018, 2019. We started working with and speaking at conferences for women in manufacturing, which is a national organization. And we met them through the Connecticut chapter folks, right? And there are more, our first time that we spoke there were 450 people there. And the last conference, it was 2,500. Wow. So, and they've got 30,000 members now nationwide, and they're in multiple countries with an event happening in Cork, Ireland. So this whole conversation about how do we attract and retain women in manufacturing is so prevalent now because more women are going into engineering, right? I mean, the career choices for women have just changed so much in the last 15 years. So the workplaces have to change along with. You can't say to somebody, go to school for 4 years to become a mechanical engineer, but you're going to go into a workplace that's going to be openly hostile to you, right? No company can afford constant turnover. Yep. So they have to look at themselves and say, what are we doing that's causing the turnover?
And some of the really, really old shops that we've worked with, like places where the actual building has been around for 150 years, there are some actual environmental pieces. For example, it sounds crazy, but there are no women's bathrooms in some of these places. So that is something that people are not necessarily openly having conversations about, that depending on, that's changing now, but someone has to be, I think if you're a woman and you're going into manufacturing and you go to tour a place and you discover that you're going to be working on the shop floor here, but you have to walk a football field length all the way over there just to take your toilet break, that's going to turn you off.
Yep.
And those places, I think, are few and far between. I think more and more people are saying, oh, wait a minute, we didn't actually build this for women. But there has to be room also. That's a problem, to answer your question about some of the problems. But I think also what is exciting to me about the way that modern manufacturing is changing is that the leadership in these places, they're slowly catching up and they're saying, oh, we need to have listening for this. We need to be willing to hear, which is, that in and of itself is a shift in the way that we're, as a country, oriented towards manufacturing. If you think about just the bones of manufacturing, where it came from at the birth of the Industrial Revolution, you were part of the machine.
That's it.
Right? You weren't a person, you were part of the machine. And that had its place for a long time. But just sort of at its core, that was the model. And now, after 50, 60 years of not putting people into manufacturing, the people who are game to go into manufacturing and be empowered and be makers or engineers or operators or whatever they want to be engaged in, they no longer have that perspective. I am not a cog in a machine. If the last 50 years of workplace in any field have taught us nothing, we need to realize that nobody wants to be a part of a cog in a machine. That's just, humans are not wired for that. Yeah. So manufacturing just sort of has an interesting spotlight on itself because its essential foundations were made of that concept. Right? But that's slowly unraveling, and what smart companies, what we're seeing a lot of our smartest clients do, and our podcast guest clients, is they're becoming more people first, and they're realizing that, oh, people make things. Cool. This is why manufacturing rocks.
Got it.
And that also intersects with the, just like the slowly moving train of generational change.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right. Gen Z employees have a very different expectation of the world of work and what it's going to be like for them as humans than boomers did.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I
Right.
think that's it's interesting. Like that point in what you said about like I have to listen is it is very different now, where employees want to have their voices be heard and try to make change by things that they see and do, and whether it's process or it's policy, whatever, they want that change. But in the past, it was like you're a part of the machine. Like you're just going to do your job and go home. And like there's it's really interesting because my uncle is an engineer at the Lee Company. Awesome organization.
But we had Marietta as a guest.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
So he's been there for like 30 something years, and he's an engineer. He puts the parts together and like figures them out and tests the quality and like that kind of stuff. But it is like, he is in that mindset of like, I am the cog in the wheel. Doesn't like really, I don't know, doesn't really talk about a lot, doesn't change a bunch of stuff. Like it's just like, I go and I do that. And then I have another friend who is there, and he's late 20s, early 30s, and very different personality wise, where he's like, this is a silly process. Why are we doing it this way?
Yes.
Change this, like, you know, and so having the leaders have to adapt to that type of style. I can see why, you know, it's been a harder start in the manufacturing space because it is all old school. Everything in most manufacturing places are still, you know, on the IT side, I see them all with Windows XP, Windows 7 machines.
I was going to say manual and spreadsheets. And, you know, not only are their practices somewhat out of step with the present, their machinery is out of step with the present. And to close that gap and to acquire machinery that's going to do the things that will allow them to use AI and to express automation where it's appropriate, they have to move mountains just to get to the place to start to talk about how to modernize the machinery, right? So a lot of their principles and practices are tied to this is the machinery we have and how do we make that work with a new group of people coming in going, why do we do it that way?
Well, and in fairness, I mean, some of that machinery is unbelievably expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars. So it's not a, you know, it's they're dealing with the double whammy. They're dealing with the thing you just named, but they're also dealing with not only do we need to try to bring our people up to speed, but good God, we have to replace this machine and it's going to cost us $2 million.
Right.
Yep. I get that.
So there's some state money for that. And then there's the question of, we spend the money, we make the decision, how do we bring the people in the plant up to speed to use the new equipment well so that it pays for itself? So that's overcoming a lot of the, well, this person doesn't want to teach me what he knows or she knows because they think I'm going to take their job. I mean, there's just all of that sort of undercurrent of still old ways and new ways transitioning. And I'm sure you see that in professional services as well. It's just that the resistance isn't necessarily tied to a physical piece of machinery and a process that's very set in stone.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, a testament to like the culture shift as well, and you know, seeing more manufacturers work with adaptive technologies and that kind of stuff, because it is like gone are the days of thinking manufacturing was like this grimy, like, you know, tough job, and there will always be some of that. But
for sure,
now it's like you're attracting people because you have the latest tech, like the automated machines, like you're building efficiencies for that. And so I think that's a big reason of why, you know, you're getting more women interested in going into it, because it's more tech forward, right? And it's not the stigma gets to go away of like what working in manufacturing is like.
Sure. And you have the industry sectors as a whole benefiting from a diversity of thought and orientation towards problem solving, right? When we get diversity in the mix, we get more collaboration. You know, we get new ideas. We get different ways of seeing things, whether it's age or gender or race or ethnicity. You know, it makes the pot better when it's got more
100%.
More things in the sauce.
Yeah. So going back to specifically the women in manufacturing, like what advice would you give to someone that wants to get into the manufacturing space? Like, do you have advice, whether, again, they're an entry level, they're an executive going into it, like what's some things that they should be thinking about before joining, besides the bathroom? or things that they should be, building, like whether it's mentorships or these relationships or whatever it is. Like, what do you guys?
What should somebody be thinking about if they're thinking about they want a career in manufacturing? Well, I think anytime anybody's making a career change, they should be very clear on their why. I mean, it's very Simon Sinek, but I mean, anything we're going to do, we want to have a clear why about it. So understanding what it is you're looking for is a first step in any adventure as far as I'm concerned. And then talking to people in the field is probably the most critical thing. And if I'm thinking back to all of our podcast episodes, that was the number one thing that people who were having really successful careers in manufacturing, to a person, they were all doing that repeatedly. They were learning about it. They were getting out into spaces to realize, what is this actually all about? What is the opportunity? Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be what I think it is? What should I expect? So, I mean, I would say it's not terribly different than anything else in terms of seeking a job. Is to try it on, see if it's a fit, be willing to improvise a little and understand that. I do think there needs to be a clear-eyed lens on a couple of things, one of which would be being acutely aware of the changing landscape inside any manufacturer. I mean, unless you're going into a really young company that started from a different place culturally, chances are you will bump into some of these places where you've got folks who are saying, well, we've done it this way for 100 years, right? But you're going to get that in any industry. Yep. So that's not exclusive to manufacturing. Yep. So, but I think you may be more likely to find it in a sort of an old school shop. Yeah. I think also it's worth it to, we all have Glassdoor and places like that. It's worth it to look at those places, but also to sanity check a little bit and read between the lines.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
About that.
Mm-hmm. We're big fans of build your network before you need it. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and we work with a leadership development program for one of the country's biggest chemical companies. Mm-hmm. And we're always talking to them about, where do you see 3 jobs down the line you want to be? Who are the people in those roles? How can you reach out to them, whether it's through LinkedIn or see what other ERGs they're serving on, and try and meet those people and know them without an ask, right? So I was just at Connecticut Technology Council had their Women of Innovation event just last night, and they had girls there who were in 5th grade doing their poster demonstrations out in the hallway. Wow, and then they had young women from the high school, and then they had women from college level, right? So there are people you can meet all along the way. The key is how do you start that? So if you have a family that's already in professional environments where they might know people, that's the best place to start. If you don't, it's through your school and your guidance counselors, right? To start to think about, could this be for me? And I won't know until I go and check it out.
Yeah, go and check it out is key. I remember one of our podcast guests, when she finished her welding certificate and she was shopping for an employer, which I thought was brilliant. She said, I'm shopping for an employer. I said, yes, that is the right attitude. Mm-hmm. And she went into a couple of different places, and when she walked around, she saw the dirty, dark, dirty, dangerous is sometimes the stereotype. And she watched the employees. So she asked for a tour, and she looked around the space, and she watched the employees. I mean, she just used her senses. Yeah. And what do my senses tell? What do my eyes tell me? Mm-hmm. What do I sense about the people in the space? And she walked out of there and said, nope, not for me. And then she went to a couple more places. And the one that she landed at was the one where the person giving her the tour was talking through everything, explaining. She got to meet people. It was clean. I mean, it was just...
Makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we overthink this stuff. Yeah. It's just use your senses. We have senses. We can use them.
No, for sure.
Well, and the other thing is, are you going to be the only one? Because that's always that's a bigger hurdle than if there are other people who you can relate to, and it doesn't have to be same gender, same age, whatever. Like, can you talk to people? Can you find a person who you feel comfortable with? And on the employee side, that's harder to know in the interview cycle, right? Mm-hmm. But for the employer, they can proactively say, who's going to be a great fit to be our onboarding mentor for this person? Not a person from HR, but somebody who actually works in the company, who can show this person like how we do what we do, and be an easy place to go to ask questions so that you don't look, whatever is stopping you from asking your question, you know you have a safe person to ask the question to, which dramatically increases their chances of success.
For sure. And I think that ties in a little bit to something that you guys do, right? Where you focus on, helping the organizations with like coming up with like their content delivery so that they can put programs in place to be able to train their employees and get them the skills that they need. Where do you guys see that coming in, as far as like what you're helping organizations with?
So I would say the number one thing that we actually get called in to help organizations do is to move people from overwhelmed to productive. So, I mean, everyone's busy, right? But what happens to us when we get busy? We get overwhelmed, we get stressed, we don't think clearly. We actually degrade our ability to perform well, right? To make great decisions, to move the needle on the most important strategic aims of the company. So many of us, particularly, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of mid-career leaders who are so overloaded that they're not actually getting to the most important things. So they just walk around being stress balls, overwhelmed, and that directly affects their ability to solve problems, make clear decisions, figure out what is the root cause of a problem, particularly when it comes to working with other people. Not like engineering problems necessarily, but other problems. And then the third thing where we see people struggle is the ability to get things done through other people. So we see a lot of manufacturing in particular, and we've seen this a lot in architecture, engineering, construction, but there's a certain firefighter personality. I have to jump in and do all of it. And there are a lot of mid-career people who, even if they don't have a firefighter personality, they're so conditioned to just be absolute workaholics. And so they end up with these three beats of this challenge. So our job is to come in and design a program for them and deliver a program for them that allows them to slow that behavior down so that they can slow down, calm down, start to think clearly. Then we enable them to be able to see what is the landscape of the problem more clearly and learn how to really work together as an ensemble. And then if you can put those three beats in place, then you can actually work on the thing that's most important. So that's really, honestly, that's the work that's near and dear to my heart, because I'm a recovering workaholic and I know what it's like to just do that nonstop and then just sort of watch time beat by and go, wow, how much of my life did I just expend doing that? So if I can make somebody's life better by helping them to stop doing that, then I've done good work for the day. And we're very lucky because we get to focus on specific behaviors. So our core belief for when it comes to content is a bit commoditized. Let's face it, it's everywhere. Like there's a glut of content. So the work that we do is much more specific to what are the consistent, simple behaviors that I need to do every single day to help me be grounded and keep a perspective on my problems and stay connected to my employees. It's that simple. We don't need complex. We need less complexity. We're in a noisy world. So I'll get off my soapbox. I can talk about that all day.
And it's so endemic to manufacturing. Right. And construction, which is and engineering and project management inside of that. Anything that is so deadline driven and all the dollars are tied to timelines and production schedules, people are just running, right? And that running, you can see it when you walk in. You can feel it in the air. And you can see it on people's bodies. You got a lot of hunched over, a lot of big bellies. You got a lot of unhealthy behaviors going on that undermine their ability to really thrive. Right. So if we can help them to address the stress, maybe they leave at the end of the day and they have more of themselves to bring home to their families, or to the things that they love. Right. To shift away from that, what Jenny talked about, that workaholic behavior, but also to talk with senior managers because the senior managers are seeing the productivity happen at the expense of the people that are in that middle.
Yep.
And they're making their numbers. And so maybe they're not questioning so much, how is it that they're getting to their numbers? What's more important, getting to the numbers of this person and this person potentially having some major health problems or causing turnover below them?
Yeah.
Because one of the companies that we worked with, their churn was some people come in, they stay 6 to 8 months, and then they leave. And they were constantly hiring, and that is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
Right? So they wanted to work on, well, we need to teach our managers to give people positive feedback. And we said, well, let's talk about those people. And it wound up being that once those folks got a better handle on emotional self-regulation and being better with delegating things, they actually calmed down enough to give praise naturally because they could take a breath. Right? But telling somebody who's completely overwhelmed, you need to get better at giving feedback, doesn't give them anything positive. First of all, it doesn't teach them to do it.
Or you just added something more to it.
Right.
Exactly.
You just made it harder for me to succeed. And I was already killing myself and doing as much as I could.
Yep.
Right. And so it's a real gift to be able to go into places and to help people get more connected to each other, to get better work done through each other, and to lower the temperature so that when an opportunity comes in, people are excited about it instead of going, oh God, not that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love that story because I look at my own like journey to where I got to today. When we were talking before, when I was employee 17, it was me, a bookkeeper, a purchasing person, and a like sales admin. And I was responsible for finance, procurement, HR, sales, and marketing, and like the facility like operations and stuff like that.
And how many heads did you have for that many hats?
Yeah,
And bourbon.
a lot of bourbon. But that was one of those things because I when I first came in, I was working 60, 70 hours a week. I was going nuts doing anything I could because like we were starting out trying to grow and build. And I look back at that journey now and I'm like, back then I was the guy, hands on everything. I would do it all. And now you're like, get out of the way, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then you continue to progress to, being a manager of those people to then now leading the department with managers below it. And all the work is getting funneled down through them. Like it's an art to be able to like learn that and be able to successfully navigate it because there's so many more layers.
Yes.
But I think the most important part that you were talking about specifically was knowing your limits and knowing your employees' limits, because I even had my own it was 2022 doing an acquisition. I was still running all the departments with no managers, and I was getting brought in to go integrate the acquisition. I was having my second kid, and I remember vividly, it was right around this time, I didn't have the leaves raked in my yard, and I was like, man, I have all of these things going on, and I'm not gonna have time, and I'm worried about the snow covering the leaves and blah 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 blah. I had a full panic attack that took me out of work for like 2 weeks. Like I couldn't speak to people. I would literally walk into Home Depot to try to test myself to see if I could like walk near people without like getting this rush of anxiety. And so it was at that time that like, all right, Foster, our CEO, came back to me. It was like, you're burning matches that you don't have. He's like, you have to know like where you are.
Yes.
And if I wouldn't take days off, I would just keep going. And so that was like a fundamental shift. But I think knowing those limits and like making sure that you know your employees' limits is one of the like most important things you can do in business, because I was ultra productive.
Sure.
But I was also like burning out at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever gotten back to that level, for good or for worse.
Sure. Well, it's a question of like, how do you define success
Yep.
for yourself? How do you define success for the people who work for you? Like what companies they start with a good idea and they start doing a thing.
Yep.
And they rarely think about how do we want other people who work here to experience this thing we're doing. Like it might come a couple years down the line where they start doing visioning and goals and putting posters on the walls or something. But the question is, what's the gap between that aspiration, if you even have it, and how people are actually behaving. Right, we've walked through some
I was just thinking about
incredible corporate hallways, going to talk with people and realize that there was such an enormous gap between the aspirations on the wall and the actual way that these senior leaders were behaving with the people who worked for them. And it's not like we have a magic wand, but it's really, when you start to talk to people and you say, well, how often are you called in on weekends? I mean, I know somebody, she's a brilliant engineer. And she was working in a chemical plant, and she had a pretty senior position, but she got really tired of wearing a pager and a cell phone and having her personal phone every single weekend because they couldn't get enough people. And it's like the quality of life, if it suffers so much that then your production stops, it shouldn't take your production stopping to realize that you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what makes me laugh, I'm sorry, I'm like laughing the whole time you're talking because it cracks me up whenever I meet somebody who has that big poster on their wall that says, we value courage, inspiration, innovation, and then all of the behaviors are exactly the opposite. And we've all worked in places like that. There is not a person alive who hasn't had a job. It's like something out of a formula. It's out of a corporate formula. Do as I say, not as I do. And so anytime I see that, that's a red flag to me when I'm walking through a hallway and I see all these signs, but we're in there because they've got huge churn, or we're in there because they are facing productivity problems of the variety you just named. And I guess that's my obsession is how can we become more in integrity with ourselves, right? How can we actually walk our walk every day? And that is not the easiest or the clearest thing to do. Right? And when I say integrity is not something you have in the classic way. Integrity is the literal, I think of it like fabric. If I am whole and I am behaving in accordance with my values and what I want and what I really believe, then I am more likely to be walking that walk as much as possible. Yeah. And if I am humble and vulnerable, then that is also going to come across to people as whole, integral, and sound. And we pick that up like that. We know when people are not like that.
Yep.
We absolutely know it. That's why people say, well, that person is really disingenuous or inauthentic or however they would name it. So I just chuckle at the corporate speak of it cracks me up. And it's just one of these days I'm going to start blogging about the corporate speak of it because it's hilarious to me.
Well, the other thing is...
TikTok. I'll TikTok it.
Yeah, you TikTok.
Yeah, I'll TikTok it.
This conversation has so much gravitas. And the thing that's so ironic is that Jenny and I, in 2008, we started taking improv classes together at an improv theater in Hartford. And from that, we started hatching this idea that Jenny started applying it in the coaching work that she was doing. I started applying the exercises that we were learning in improv to the training and development that I was doing. And we came up with this idea of what would happen if we actually combined some of the stuff that we're seeing in the world that's a need with using exercises from improvisation to activate learning with people so that they'd laugh and have fun. Crazy idea, right? That people would laugh their way to learning. It was a spark. Yeah. And it lit a flame, and our first program was called Connect and Stand Out, and we created it because we were marketing our separate businesses at networking events, and they would go around the table and they would ask people to stand up and introduce themselves. And the people would stand up and die. Like all the blood would run out of their faces, and they needed a glass of water. And it was like, well, if we can help people get more comfortable being seen and heard, then they can be better at marketing their businesses and talking with people and building their networks. And everything that we do now incorporates exercises from the world of improvisation. It's called applied improvisation, which is a whole other field of study, so that people are learning by doing. Yeah. They're actually experiencing exercises instead of, being death by PowerPointed, which, Jenny talked about the commoditization of content. Like, you have to actually experience being in a listening exercise and going, wow, I really was not great at that. There's room for improvement. Or I aced that, I really did well with that, right? And giving them opportunities to see how they do it and how it could be different that allows them to learn those behavioral changes.
Yeah, and it's funny, I think like one of the biggest issues I see with most middle management is their inability to speak clearly, give direction, engage the audience. And a lot of the time you can tell, like, wow, that guy was really uncomfortable the entire time. And I think even in our own business, right, like we don't have a ton of people that are doing a lot of like outward facing things. Like I'm doing a million things, but I kind of like pushed my way into this and forced myself into it. And to the point where I don't mind just like walking with a phone and like recording myself saying things that are happening around me or whatever. And those are things that I think are one of the most critical pieces that are missing from those middle management people. What do you guys think?
Oh, completely, 100%. And I also think that there's a big piece of the business world that I think can receive one of the best gifts that improv brings us. So I was a theater kid, so I've done improv my whole life. And I started applying improvisation professionally, all of the applied improvisation model that Ellen just referenced. I started doing that years ago. And part of what I saw that was available was permission to have and use emotion. Because when you're performing on stage, one of the things you're doing is you're playing a character. So that character has a point of view and that character has feelings. And when you're on stage and you're creating something fun for your audience spontaneously, you have to not only be, what does my character feel? But you also have to be reading, what is this other character feeling? What are they? Okay, so there's some anger coming at me. Oh yeah, well you broke that pencil that I was going to use for my exam and whatever. So
I did break.
You have to be. I know you did. And so emotion is baked into it. But we have this ridiculous thing that we do in this country where we say emotion doesn't belong in business, which is an absolute load of manure. It's such nonsense. And so, the field of emotional intelligence is realistically not that old. American business is older than the field of emotional intelligence. Sure. So improvisation, when you practice it as a theater craft or you apply it in business, you have to have access to laughing, looking silly, and feeling feelings because they're informing everything you're doing. So to me, that's one of the best gifts that improvisation gives to business, is that we need more permission for feelings to have a role in business, because we're not robots. We don't have an off switch for our feelings. And anybody who says otherwise is itching for a fight, and I will get in that ring. but really we don't. I mean, this is when we teach engineers. What I love about engineers is they're so coachable around this area. We say to them, you don't have an off switch for your feelings. You bring them into work every day. So you can either become the master of that emotional system or you can be at its mercy. And they say, I think I would rather master it, because then it's something that I can leverage and control. And the more we do that, the more we level the playing field. This is particularly true for men working in business and men working in manufacturing, is if you as a man show healthy access to your feelings, not in the like, I want to share with you my deepest, darkest secret, but just like, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling like $1 million, or just the simple act of naming and sharing emotion and allowing it to be a part of how you operate in the world gives social permission to everybody around you to have emotions. So if I could wave a magic wand across most businesses in general, manufacturing or otherwise, it would be, can we get over this whole idiotic idea that feelings don't have a place in business? Because it's crap.
Yeah. So how does that tie into like, again, specifically like emotional intelligence, right? Like, why is that so critical for people to have,
I'm sorry, I think you need to shut up now, because your response is not making me feel good.
That was direct.
So take it out of the scene for a second. I totally had you for a second there. That was awesome. No, but think about it. So if you think about if that's how a boss responds, right? If that's how a boss responds, right? Right. Look what you just did. You just went, fine. Right? So if I'm an employee and I'm feeling a feeling, and you as my boss are unwilling to have space for me to have that feeling, how is that ultimately going to affect the outcomes of our work? How does that affect how we work as an ensemble? How does that affect how I feel about you and how much I respect you?
Yep.
Right? So it's baked in. The emotional intelligence has to be baked into how we work. And it more than ever, EQ has to be a part of how we're working, because the more we're using technology, the better we need to get at the human stuff.
Yeah,
For sure.
exactly.
So
So where do you guys put that like into your strategy, right? Because that's like a huge thing to teach people and get them to understand, like being empathetic and understanding.
well, first we get into a circle, and then we start singing Kumbaya.
We hold
And
hands.
we hold hands, and there's usually some prayer and meditation.
Somebody cries immediately.
Take a talking stick.
You know,
I can't do it anymore.
You know, when I ask you, Sal, you know, if you go into your head and you think of a situation that's going on at work right now that you know is causing you some level of emotional stress,
Yep.
and I put you in a conversation with a partner, and you talk about, you know, what is it about this that's causing me stress? What's my part in it?
And
What's the other person's part? What do I hope would be resolved here? And what are my next steps to getting to a better place with this person around this thing? I've now taught you emotional intelligence without saying that emotional intelligence is based on how your limbic system reacts when your brain gets activated. Because, right, we do teach brain science. We're total brain nerds. And because as soon as she did that, I watched your face and you flushed. That is, you had an instant chemical response, because that's how our brains are wired.
Yep.
But if you can go,
Bravo
wow,
for going with it, by the way.
yeah, good job improvising.
got to do it.
You know, if we can teach people not only to look at a situation and take it apart dispassionately when their emotions aren't activated, we can also talk to them about how likely is it that you would have come to that same result if you were angry.
Yeah.
How likely, right? So we have a whole emotional intelligence cycle that we teach to people, which is basically to notice that your emotions are activated, to separate yourself from that if you can by either breathing or having a glass of water, to pause and figure out what is it that is causing me to have this response, and then to actively choose your response. Because the opposite of that is something happens, it goes through our filters, we react, and it has impacts. And the more we do that, the more it becomes the way we respond, and then it becomes a pattern, right? So we have to help people recognize this is the pattern that I normally fall into, and this is how to proactively break the pattern to choose something else, to give them something to replace it with, right?
It's helpful. Yeah. And so where does that's a critical part, but I think something that we did in our organization, and I'm interested to hear where you guys have done it, because I know one of you is DISC certified, bingo, but like you use any one of those like personality assessments to learn. Like a lot of people say like, oh, I gained the personality thing so people can figure out if I'm crazy, but in reality you use those personality assessments to understand that person, to figure out how you better like work with them and manage them and collaborate with them. And so like where does that come into, you know, what you guys do from a professional development side?
We like to think of DISC as a starter kit for personal development for people who have never done it, because when we go into workplaces, very often, particularly in, you know, sort of tough spaces like manufacturing, most of the spaces we work in are places where we may be, in fact, their first spend on personal development or professional development ever. Like if you work for, you know, big insurance in the Hartford area, you probably have a line item for professional development, leadership development. But that is not a given everywhere you go. So I will never forget, Ellen will know exactly what I'm talking about. We worked with a DPW group one time, and it was a group of 20 guys. Half of them were showing up on Zoom in their trucks. It was awesome. And this one guy was a giant of a human too. He was
like
so big.
Filled that Ford F-50.
Yeah, he's leaning on the window. He's got his phone up like this, and he goes, you know, I never really thought about the fact that there are different kinds of people. We're like,
Interesting.
you're right.
That was a
big aha. Yeah, it was a huge flash for him. So, I mean, DISC is, you know, sort of one-dimensional, but it is great. It's like training wheels for exploring and understanding who and how you are, and the fact that we're different humans and our motives and our ways of operating and our values and our communication styles and personality preferences are different. We don't actually benefit by taking it for granted that everybody understands that, because lots of people weirdly don't understand that. It sounds a little crazy to say that out loud, but that's what we've seen a lot.
Yeah. It also gives them a common language. Right. So if I'm planning a team meeting, or if I'm putting together a group that I want to work on a project, if I have something like DISC in my pocket and I can look at the distribution of my team, I can make some active choices about putting people who are either similar, like if I want all my data dogs, I just want them to dive in. I don't want them to come up with anything creative. I know who I'm going to choose. Yeah. Right. And you might know that intuitively, but after they've taken the assessments, you have a little bit more information. Yep. But that's not all of who and how people are, for sure. You know, you have how they were raised, what schools they went to or didn't, you know, what work experiences they have or don't. So it's one piece of the puzzle, but when you combine that sort of as a starter kit, as Jenny said, and then you roll out into, so let's talk about an exercise on listening, that we all listen. Some people listen for data, some people listen for emotions. And then they start to think, oh, well, that's sort of aligned with the kind of person I am. Maybe if I got better at listening for emotions as well as data, I could create a connection with the person and they'd actually share more with me.
Yeah.
Right? So they start to understand how to use it as one tool in the toolbox instead of being the entire toolbox.
Yeah.
And what we see with a lot of organizations is they try and approach it as a one and done. Yeah. Like we've done DISC for everybody in our organization. We have a great platform and everybody, now we're good. No,
we're done now, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't fix everything. It gives you a context for understanding other people, but get right back to what Jenny said, unless they start to change their daily behaviors, right? If I'm a very talkative, high I personality, then I would hope that you would come into my office in the morning and we could chit chat for a few minutes. And you would learn that because now you know I'm an I, and you're not just going to come in with an ask. Right? You know you need to talk to me for a few minutes, right? By the same token, if I'm getting ready for a meeting with you and I know you're a high D personality, we're going to be talking in bullets.
Yep.
And I will have the details. But I better not come in with 4 pages of details. Yeah. Because you're just going to like, come back to me when you have a recommendation kind of behavior. So it helps people to depersonalize the way people are acting.
Yeah. So answer your question also about how do we connect this to strategy? So when I'm building a program for someone, one of the things that I'm always doing is I'm looking at what is the business need, so that when I'm layering up their program, you know, first Ellen's going to have them and she's going to help them out with DISC, and then, you know, maybe another facilitator's going to have them and we're going to build in some improv skills. It's very strategic in terms of making sure that there is a very clear connection between here's the thing I'm learning, here's why it matters for my job, here's what's in it for me,
right,
to spend any time on paying attention to what's happening in the room, and here's where it lands in our business strategy. And I think that honestly, that's probably not something enough companies stop to think about when they just say, I want a team building event.
Yeah. Well, and team building events,
let's rethink that.
they can be fun. Hopefully they're not escape rooms, because those things terrorize me.
Never get out.
I love them.
Oh, never get out.
So, but the thing is that all of the dysfunction that you have as a team will show up in spades inside of that escape room. And if there's no one to debrief what just happened, it just has people dig in deeper on the challenges that were there before they went into the room. So that's why I don't like escape rooms. And I don't go in them with my family either. That's not.
That's a recipe for wrecking the family dinner.
Very competitive humans.
You don't want to leave with more problems.
No, but there's a different, you know, if you give me an organization, I'd rather work with a core group of people who have a lot of influence in the organization and get them grounded in why are we here, how are we going to behave with each other, what are our commitments that we make to each other in the organization, and have them fan it out, than to do something for an entire organization and give them this much. Right? Go deep, not wide. Make sure people are grounded and can then each one teach one. Right? That they have the ability to duplicate what they've learned with others, hold people accountable for a different set of behaviors, because otherwise you're just spending money.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I love the perspective. And as we kind of transition to the end here, like I appreciate, the different perspective that you guys were able to give me, especially when it comes to like professional development and, how people should be thinking about training their team and how they should be adapting to the, different changes in the workforce. I do have to ask for a One Poor Problems exclusive interview here is, are we going to see the manufacturing shakeup make a reappearance this coming back? The people need to know.
From your mouth to God's ears.
From your mouth to God's ears. That would be it. Yeah.
It was funded by the state of Connecticut as part of the Elevate Her initiative.
Yeah.
And we have a new chief manufacturing officer. That person might have a different set of priorities. So we don't know.
We would take a sponsor.
That's right.
Yeah, we would take a sponsor. So, and we've entertained that because we've had a lot of people asking us that question when we go here, there, and everywhere, because we do a lot of speaking. So I was just in Detroit and then Chicago. I'll be in Dallas next week or something. And where am I going?
With a stop in Texas.
That's right. There's a stop in Texas and somewhere in between.
2 Texas stops.
We get a lot of great feedback about it. So clearly we're serving and helping people, and that's really important to us. So we would love to find a sponsor that would say, hey, you know what? Let's keep elevating the stories in snack-sized pieces that will help people craft a great career, help women craft a great career in manufacturing. Let's advance the cause. So
Love it.
I'll consider that a call to sponsorship.
That's right, call to sponsorship. And also, the shakeup was based just here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And with all of the travels that we do and the people that we meet, there are some amazing resources that we would love to interview so that the benefit of that could get out to the broader audience here in Connecticut and beyond, right?
100%.
There are some people doing some really, really cool
Extraordinary
things
work.
across the country.
Yeah.
I mean, they're,
Without a doubt.
yeah.
The same rules apply to the companies that it does to the workforce, right?
Yeah.
The diversity that you can bring from people operating in different places in the country and their perspectives, like that can only benefit more than it could ever, take away from what they do. So,
Yeah. And shout out to Connecticut for all that Connecticut does
Yeah, man.
for the manufacturing sector and for women in manufacturing. It's not this case everywhere in the country because
It is really not.
do a lot of work in other places and there's not nearly the level of support that we have here. So that's awesome.
Small but mighty Connecticut.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Sal.
And we'll see you on the shakeup.
Yes. Well, let's hope so. And thanks to TSG for having us here in their
Yes.
gorgeous
Yes.
space.
Shout out to Torrison Stone Garden. Thank you again. This place is beautiful.
Place is beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.